It's time.
It's time for a new episode of TMG.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to TMG. I'm your host, Travis Patton Sr. I enjoy discovering and sharing real-life moments of inspiration from everyday people. And this show is about finding moments of inspiration for our everyday lives. And look, and if you're going to tell me something, then tell me something good. Hi, everybody, and welcome to a brand new episode of TMG. That's Tell Me Something Good. I'm your host, Travis Patton Sr. Guys, real quick before we do this, you know how we like to do it. Don't forget to visit our YouTube page. That's Tell Me Something Good with the capital T. And as always, guys, I got to give a huge shout out to my biggest supporter, my biggest fan, my lovely wife, Nicole. Hey, girl, how you doing? Nicole, that's your shout out. I know you're watching. I know you're listening. Guys, it is Tuesday, and TMG is streaming. I know typically we're not here on Tuesdays, but this is a very special episode. Guys, we're bringing back a guest that wanted to be on the show last week, had some difficulties. He said, Travis, we got to do this show, man. I'm excited about doing so. We're going to bring in our special guest tonight, guys. Listen, as you know, for a very short time, this show has taken off. And it's being heard in places all around the world, guys, like Japan, like the Philippines, China, Canada, Great Britain. And I'm so glad people are tuning in and listening. And if this is your first time listening to the show, your very first time tuning in, let me take the time to tell you thank you for tuning in and watching the show. Maybe, just maybe, you've been watching the show all along. And you said, Travis, man, I'm an avid watcher and viewer and listener of your show. Let me say this to you. Thank you so much for watching the show. I appreciate that. Now, listen, everybody knows that this show is all about finding moments of inspiration in our everyday lives, like me and like you. So if you have an inspirational story that you would like to share with everybody and maybe be a guest on the show, don't forget to drop me a line right there in the email. That's tellmesomething21@gmail.com. Let me spell it out. So if you're going to go back and you're not viewing this, it's TELLME something 21@gmail.com. Guys, I'm going to start off because of our special guest. I'm going to go ahead and do this real quick. I'm going to play a clip from our special guest. He is a comedian. He's a comic writer and a TEDx speaker, a 9-time TEDx speaker. Guys, this guy has wrote for some of the greatest comics alive that we know about. Jay Leno on The Tonight Show. He has written for him. So I'm going to play a very short, quick clip for this guy before I bring him on. And guys, you have got to really enjoy this. So listen to this clip I got for our special guest.
Yeah. Have you been to North Dakota? Yes. Good people. Hard-working, tax-paying, church-going, little heavily Caucasian. I had trouble finding black licorice.
Guys, yeah, that's what kind of is. Guys, listen, I'm not going to hold up any longer. If you haven't caught today's message of what we're going to talk about, guys, today's message, today's topic is no laughing matter. Guys, I'm going to go ahead and bring in our special guest. His name is Frank King. Everybody give him a warm TMG welcome. Frank, get on the camera. Let everybody know how you doing, man.
Well, we have an hour, Travis, but between your recorded introduction and your audio introduction, we're done. So listen, it's been nice being here. Tell your wife I said hi.
Don't start too early, Frank. It's way too early to get started, man. So glad that you were here. How you doing today, man?
I'm busier than a hooker at a four-way stop.
We're in for a ride, people. We are in for the ride of our lives, man. Frank, how's your day? How's it been going? What's been new with you, man?
Day's going well. I had a webinar this morning. It was titled "How to Make Money Speaking on Cruises at Colleges for Corporations Associations." Turns out a lot of people want to make money speaking, and a lot of people will teach you how to be a speaker, but what they don't teach you is how to make money doing it. How do you get booked? Speaking is easy. Getting booked, hard. So anyway, it went very well. We had 40 people there. We're offering some group coaching if they want to sign up. And I coach Make Money Speaking and TEDx, of course, because I've got 9 of them.
Yeah, 9. Wow.
Yep. Bill Gates, by the way, has 8. Your move, Bill.
So he's next. Is he playing checkers and you're playing chess, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. It's time for you
exactly.
to up your game, Bill.
Yeah, you're top tier. Frank, man, listen. First of all, thank you for coming back onto the show. We really appreciate that. I know everyone is here. They're watching. They're glad that you came back. They're glad that you're here, man. And, you and I were talking before the show, typically we make plans, but it's kind of like we have to negotiate with life if we're going to actually execute those plans well enough or not.
Yes. What is it? The Jewish folks say, man plans, God laughs. And Mike Tyson, of course, everybody's got a plan until they get hit in the mouth.
Exactly. That first punch will always make you rethink everything.
Yeah.
Should I be doing this or not?
Yeah, it was a good day. I did a lot of Zooms, had a lot of client calls, coaching people to get TEDx or coaching people to make money speaking. And it's business is good.
Well, that's fantastic. So it sounds like you've been kind of busy then, Frank.
Yeah, last week I did a virtual from here in my living room for 419 nurses at the University of Wisconsin. I spoke on suicide prevention as a health and safety issue. And then the next day in Portland, Oregon, I drove up 2 hours to Portland, Oregon, did 3 hours of suicide prevention, continuing education for police chiefs and fire chiefs. So business is good. Speaking business is good.
That's excellent. And that's kind of what we're talking about tonight. You mentioned you did a lot of talking on this and speaking on suicide prevention, and that's kind of going to be the topic we were tonight. And guys, today's topic, as I mentioned earlier, was no laughing matter. And the irony is that we are joined by a comedian, and we're saying no laughing matter. And he's a comedian, guys, who goes around and he speaks passionately about suicide prevention, and we're going to find out why this is so important and so serious for Frank, guys, because we want to dive into this. So Frank, you and I, we've done some talking and emailing and back and forth, so we've got to know each other, and we got to talk and discuss. Tell the audience a little bit about who you are and how you got to be a comedian and where you are. Because I know something about you. They don't. So share a little bit about yourself.
Well, people always ask, were you born funny? Oh, yes. As a matter of fact, an amusing thing happened on the way down the birth canal. No, in 4th grade, 9 years old, told my first joke. Kids laughed. Teacher was hysterical. She was laughing so hard she had to excuse herself, go to the teacher's lounge. At that moment, I decided I'm going to be a stand-up comedian when I grow up.
Exactly.
And 12th grade talent show. Nobody had ever done stand-up. This is the spring of 1975. I did stand-up and I won the talent show. Of course, I was competing against the accordion player and the folk dancers. Really wasn't really fair. And I told my mom I'm going to LA to be a comedian. And she said, no, you're going to college first. I don't care what you do when you get done. You can be a goat herder for all I care.
But you're taking your butt to college.
Yes. And so I did. I went to UNC Chapel Hill. Got a couple of college degrees and boogied for the West Coast. Did my first amateur night. Halfway through my 5 minutes, I heard a voice inside my head say, "You're home." And also I heard, "You're going to do this for a living." I had no idea how. 18 months later, told my girlfriend, now my wife of 35 years, I'm going on the road to be a stand-up comedian. Do you want to come along for the ride? Figuring she'd go, "Oh, hell no." And she goes, "Yeah."
Wow. So
we
she was
gave
all in. So she's all
Yeah.
in.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. No, we burned the boats. There's no going back. Gave her our jobs, our apartment, jumped in my tiny little Dodge Colt, and we were on the road together, nonstop, no home. She just came along for the ride for 2,629 nights in a row, nonstop.
Wow. Wow. So
Yep.
that's what you call a definitely life partner.
Yes. Oh yeah. Somebody asked me, "Are you and Wendy still together? Who divorces a woman like that?" Yeah. So did that 2,629 nights, no home. Did a little radio after that. And when radio ended, as it always does, there are two kinds of people in radio, Travis: people who've been fired, people that are going to be fired. And I took a number one morning show and I drove it to number 6 in 18 months. I didn't just drive it in the ground. A friend of mine said, "You drove that thing in the middle earth." When I got done, the comedy club thing had busted. The boom had busted. So, but my act was clean. So I jumped into the corporate comedy circuit, conventions. And somebody said to me, "What's the difference between a club comic and a corporate comic?" And the answer is $5,000 a night plus travel. So I made ridiculous money until 2007 was my best year in comedy. I think I did 96 engagements. I was exhausted, but made over $200,000 telling jokes. And then the last recession hit, and that business dropped off 80% practically overnight. And where'd you go, Travis?
I'm still here. Go ahead.
Okay.
I put you on the screen.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Like, what? The guy ghosted me in the middle of his own podcast. How the hell does that work? No, when the recession hit, my wife and I ended up having to file Chapter 7 bankruptcy. They lost everything we'd worked for in 25 years, and that's when I learned what the barrel of my gun tasted like, literally. Spoiler alert for the audience: I did not pull the trigger. A friend of mine came up to me at a keynote recently and he said this, and I quote, "Hey man, how come you didn't pull the trigger?" Like, hey man, could you try to sound slightly less disappointed? That's where the humor is in the topic. It's not jokes, it's funny personal stories. So when I came back to doing conferences, the meeting planner said to me, "Frank, we love you. We just can't pay you that kind of money just to be funny. You've got to teach the audience something." And I had always wanted to make a living and a difference, just had no idea how. And I read a book by a woman named Judy Carter called The Message of You: Turning Your Life into a Money-Making Speaking Career. I went into it thinking I got nothing. And about halfway through, I thought, oh my gosh, I do have something to teach. Because given the fact that I have 2 mental illnesses, close brush with suicide, and there are more nuts in my family than in a squirrel turd, that if I got some training and in suicide prevention, got some certifications, I could keynote, and I got certifications. Now, Travis, the other hurdle, and comedians face this, is that I've been a comic at that point 25 years. Who's going to believe I can do anything serious? So I said, how am I going to convince them? My wife said, do a TEDx. I said, what's a TEDx? Just so happened I got an email that week from TEDx, a TEDx up in Vancouver, British Columbia. Say, hey, you're welcome to apply. So I applied, I got it. And I did a TEDx on suicide prevention. And that kicked off I went from being a funny speaker, a comedian, to a speaker who was simply funny. And I've been keynoting on suicide prevention as a workplace health and safety issue since 2014.
Wow.
And unfortunately, Travis, suicide is a growth industry. I'm going to a college showcase this 17th, 18th, 19th of March. College kids come to this national showcase with their activity funds and an advisor, and they see comedians and bands and jugglers. They also see speakers. So I'll do 10 or 15 minutes of my show, and then they'll decide if I'm coming to campus. And the reason it's important, by the way, is because 3 college students a day die every day of suicide. 3 a day every day.
Wait. Yeah. You said 3 on average. It's about a national average of 3 college students a day just from suicide.
24,000 college students every year, roughly, seriously contemplate suicide, and 1,100 in their lives. So it's roughly 3 a day every day.
Wow, that's amazing. And we think typically when I know when I was in college, the furthest thing, you have already had the expectations on you from family members, the expectations, from your professors and your peers, and you want to do well. And for a lot of people, when they're starting college, they're away from home, possibly. So there's a lot of things, a lot of dynamics that are in place for these young adults to succeed, do better. You don't want to let your parents down. They've already told their friends and their friends' friends and other family members. So you don't want to let anybody down. So this pressure's on you to meet expectations of people you probably never met.
And college has become something of the Hunger Games in that you need to finish, top of your class in high school to get into a good college. And then you need to finish top of your class in college if you're going to professional school, veterinary medicine, dentists, attorneys, doctors. So, and the latest study I saw said 60% of college students have anxiety and co-occurring mental health problems, and it's double what it was 10 years ago.
Wow.
So they're not all suicidal, but over half of them are anxious.
And they're feeling that anxiety on them. That's incredible. Your story, how you began, is absolutely funny. You broke off a good one to your teacher. You tell your girlfriend, you're gonna move across this country. We're gonna go do jokes. I'm gonna go do stand-up comedy. She sticks with you, and so your career's kind of moving now, right? Your career's kind of got a little traction. You got a little.
Comedy is kind of business, Travis, where as you move on in life, age-wise, you need to reinvent yourself. I was a road comic for 2,629 nights, 7 years and change. I did radio for a year or two. So I reinvented myself as a morning DJ. I still did comedy, when I wasn't on the air.
Right.
And then after that, when I got fired, I became a corporate comic instead of a club comic. And then last recession, I reinvented myself again. Went from a funny speaker, a comedian, to a speaker who's simply funny. And now I did a TEDx, and that was the first one. I just did my 9th TEDx February 11th in Hamilton, Ontario, up in Canada. And so I coach people to get TEDx talks, and I coach people a separate program, how to make money speaking.
Wow.
Which actually is more popular. People want TEDx, but man, they want to make a living speaking. And so I'm doing that as well.
That's pretty cool. So your career is moving, man. You got your girl on your side. You have the winds at your back. Things starting to roll. So your career's kind of up and going. It's moving, and you're kind of finding your way a bit, right? In show business and comedy, from radio, you're kind of finding your way back. So my question is, how did you begin writing for the Tonight Show? You got to ask for that one there.
Well, back in the day, Jay Leno was he was a permanent guest host for Johnny Carson back in the day.
I remember that.
And Johnny would, because it was his show, say to his staff, I'm taking next week off, which meant every Monday was Best of Carson, a rerun. But Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Leno had to fill in for Johnny. And each of those nights, he needed 18 jokes for his monologue. Wow. So he started hiring road comics like me to fax in topical jokes. And I was faxing in 2 dozen topical jokes for his monologues for that week. And then when he got the job for real, became his show.
Right.
He let most of the contract labor go, but he kept some of us on. And we wrote by, facts, believe it or not, until he left for CNBC.
Wow. That's crazy. So you had a pretty long, extensive stint of producing.
Roughly 20 years overall.
20 years? Jeez, that's a lot. What did you enjoy most about doing that? About writing for Jay Leno and the Tonight Show? What did you enjoy most about it?
It's two things. One, it's good practice as a comic. Keep your comedy muscle strong.
I bet I can see that.
Writing dozen or 2 dozen jokes a day, you really have to be working at it. You have to think funny. You have to wake up thinking funny, go to bed thinking funny.
Yeah, I know, right?
back in the day, I had a VCR, and I would tape the Tonight Show with Jay Leno on there, and
A
it was like,
VCR.
you remember that? And
Wow.
I would watch the tape first thing in the morning of the monologue to see if he bought any of my jokes. It was like watching that lottery show where they're pulling numbers. Um, and what I would do is, because we are all working from the same newspaper, same stories, if there was a percentage in the story, like 25% of women, I would make it 24% of women. That way, if I heard Jay start with, 24% of women, I go, that's my joke, because the number was really 25. And so then if he did one of my jokes, I would get a check in the mail shortly thereafter for the joke.
Wow. That's amazing. Who else did you write for?
I wrote for Joan Rivers for a little while. I wrote for Dennis Miller for a while. I think those are the only well-known comics that I wrote for.
Wow, pretty busy. So having to write for these top list A-listers comics, keeping everything going, keeping everything fresh, keeping them fresh in front of the camera, in front of doing their monologues, and keeping the show moving. That can be like a pretty high pressure role to play in a larger business, in a huge cog. So
Yeah, not difficult for me. It's joke writing comes naturally. I believe it's part of my mental illness. I have two mental illnesses: depression and suicidality. And I think my creativity and imagination are just the flip side of that. Same brain, same wiring. I can teach you to write and do stand-up comedy. I cannot teach you to process the incoming information.
Right.
Yeah.
So
I'm often somewhere and somebody will say something and I'm the only one. I bet you've done this. I bet you've been in the movie and you're watching the movie and you're laughing at something and you look around and you're the only one laughing because you got the joke. And that's how it is for me day in, day out. Somebody will say something and my brain will turn it around into a joke almost immediately. And
wow.
so I really think I think I've done several TEDx talks. The last one on this topic was called I'm Not Broken, I Was Made This Way. Because I kept meeting people with a mental health challenge, but they had some other amazing ability. They had this disability, but
right.
they had ability. And I think that's the blessing and the curse of my mental illness is that I have this other ability. There's a reason that I can take down a heckler literally without giving it a thought. I'm at a club one night. They're throwing a young woman out. She's drunk. I turn away from her, so I'm taking attention off of her. But she gets to the door with the bouncers, and then she must have heard something sounded like her name. She starts turning back because drunks are voice activated.
Oh yeah.
So she turns back to me and she screams, "F you!" But she didn't say F. F you. And before I didn't think this, I just said to her, "No, honey, not even for practice." And standing ovation. And somebody came up afterwards and go, "How did you think that up so fast?" I didn't think it. When you heard it, I heard it. I was just as surprised as you were.
It was real time, buddy. It was real time. So here's a question for you. So all this going on, doing well. You got to write these jokes. Keep them going. Keep them coming. Keep them churning, so to speak. To some, there might have been pressure. What did you feel any pressure? And if you were, and if you did, how were you able to manage it? If you did,
there was some pressure. I mean, I was doing it as a contract labor, meaning I was writing jokes on spec. So if I didn't turn any in, and now if you're in house, and that was the dream, was that Leno actually plucked some of the contract labor from obscurity and brought him in house NBC to write. That was the dream. I never got that far, but those guys they have a quota to meet.
Wow.
And so that would be, I had a friend who wrote for Dennis Miller in-house. And he said some days he'd just sit in front of his computer and then the screen would go dark. And he realized he'd been sitting there 15 minutes without thinking anything funny. So that was, that pressure would have gotten to me. The fact you're on and you have to compete against everybody else in-house. They give you premises. All right, everybody writes best joke. All right, everybody write a rant. And so, yes, I think that would be pressure packed. And comedy, making people laugh. It's difficult to make people laugh. No, I've been doing that since I was 9. The difficult part, Travis, is getting booked, getting the job. When people ask me what I do, describe your job. Okay. I'm not really a speaker. I am a sales and marketing person who speaks. 85% of my time is sales and marketing. 5% performing, 5% writing, 5% traveling. But I'm a salesman, really. And because when you start doing speaking or comedy, you are working on 100% commission. You eat what you kill. And that's what I started with 35 comics at open mic night back in the day. Only 3 of us ever escaped gravity and were able to make a living at it because the other people just didn't have the business sense. They just had they couldn't. Yeah, and we weren't the funniest 3, by the way. We were not. There were people in that graduating class at open mic night who were far funnier, and they never went anywhere. My mother would say, because talent, mother very Southern, talent, honey, is neither necessary nor sufficient. You don't have to have talent. Look at some of the comics. Rosie O'Donnell was not particularly talented as a comic. However, she was a great marketer. Steve Harvey, by the way, was not a great comic as comics go. He wasn't splitting the comedy at him. He just sold those jokes like nobody's business and turned it into an industry. I worked with Steve. Steve saved my behind one day. We're working at Birmingham Comedy Club, went to the YMCA to play basketball, and I'm playing in a game with the locals. Steve's standing on the sideline with a couple of locals. And one of the guys got mad at me, and he comes up, he's bumping chests as guys are wont to do.
Yeah.
And the guy on either side of Steve Harvey starts to step on the court to help out their friend. And Steve goes, "Look, fellas, I don't even like Frank that much. But
wait a minute.
I came with him. And so if you get into this, then I got to get into this. It's just going to get ugly." And they stepped back. Now, Steve and I both got thrown out of the gym, but I didn't get my ass kicked. Thank you, Steve.
I can imagine. Man, guys, I want you to hear what we're talking about. Our topic is no laughing matter. And Frank is really giving us some of what we need. He's talking about his career in comedy. Now we're going to jump into something that really kind of sheds a different light on what we're talking about. So you're known, Frank, as the mental health comedian. Did anything occur with you that brought about that name? I heard you mention you had 2 things that you deal with a lot.
Yeah.
So what brought about that name? And you can elaborate on the part you mentioned earlier. You said you know what the barrel of your gun tastes like. What happened?
Well, we filed bankruptcy, and depression and suicide run in my family. It's called generational depression and suicide. My grandmother died by suicide. My mother found her. My great aunt 9 years later died by suicide. My mother and I found her. I was 4 years old and I screamed for days. And if you're already hardwired for depression and suicide and you're that close to an actual suicide, chances of you seriously considering taking your life at some point later in your life go up. And that's what happened. I was hardwired for it. And I had $1 million life insurance policy. I knew I could restore my wife financially if I pull the trigger. And I just went to the barn to practice, see if I could put the gun in my mouth, pull the hammer back. I was practicing because I didn't know how long I'd have the insurance policy. And I knew from my 6 years of selling insurance straight out of college, there's a 2-year suicide clause. If you kill yourself in less than 2 years, nothing. If you wait 2 years and a day, she gets $1 million. Well, it turned out I'd only have my life insurance policy 22 months. I had to wait 60 days to kill myself. Not a problem. I can do that. Fortunately, I wasn't marking days off the calendar, and I don't remember day 61 or 2 or 3. Things must have gotten just a little bit better. And that was 2010. And in 2020, in August 9th, Chapter 7 stays on your credit for 10 years. Well, on August 9th of 2020, the Chapter 7 came off. We worked our way out of bankruptcy and back to solvency. But again, I had been doing comedy, and comedy just wasn't going to cut it anymore. I needed to speak on something. So I chose suicide prevention as a workplace health and safety issue. And unfortunately, it's a growth industry. That's how construction has the worst suicide rate of any U.S. industry. 1,000 people die of accidents, 1,000 of accidents in construction every year. 5,000 die of suicide. That means you're 5 times more likely to jump off the building than fall off. So I speak to a goodly number of construction associations trying to bring the suicide rate down. And I have 2 mental illnesses, major depressive disorder which is depression. It's not situational. It's like a wheel with a flat spot every time, I've been most depressed some of the best times in my life.
Wow.
And chronic suicidal ideation, which is relatively rare. I mean, I've mentioned chronic suicidal ideation out loud to mental health clinicians, and a goodly number of them have no idea what it is. They stare at me at that point like a pig looking at a wristwatch. And it's not in the big book of psychological ailments, the DSM. And here's a description of chronic suicidal ideation. For me and people in my tribe, the option of suicide is always on the menu as a solution for problems large and small. And I tell the audience, when I say small, my car broke down a couple of years ago. I had 3 thoughts. 1, get it fixed. 2, buy a new one. 3, I could just kill myself. Which sounds absurd, but here's the upside, Travis. Every time I tell that story, and I've told it every keynote I've done since 2014, there is usually one person in the audience, sometimes more, who has chronic suicidal ideation. They don't know it has a name. They think they're just some kind of freak and all alone. And I did a college recently, and a young woman came up afterwards. Thanks for the keynote. I said, you're welcome. She goes, but God tell you, it made me weep. I said, how to make you weep? She said, your story about the car, get it fixed, buy a new and kill yourself? Yeah. She said, I've been having those thoughts all my life. I didn't know that had a name. I thought I was some kind of freak and completely alone. And when I heard you say out loud, you have this, I realized, she said, for the first time in my life, I am not alone, and I wept. That's the power of starting the conversation on suicide. Now, the comedy, the humor is not jokes, but funny personal stories. And what that does, Travis, is that makes it far more digestible.
Exactly.
Comic relief for a reason. There's a psychological principle. If you have to tell somebody something serious, and then you follow it with a little comic relief, their brain is much better prepared for the next serious piece of business. So
absolutely,
I make it digestible, I make it memorable with humor, and I make them comfortable with me, talking about the subject. And here's what happens, Travis. I have to allow a half an hour to 45 minutes after I speak to handle all the people who have lined up with an individual question or story. I'm telling you, I have heard the most amazing stories from people I just met. And Travis, they mostly start like this. I've never told anybody this. I get that a lot. I mean, they tell me things they haven't ever told anybody. I was doing a construction event in Cincinnati. A black gentleman, mid-20s, I guess, saw my presentation, got in line. When he gets to me, he's crying so hard he can't speak. So I wait. I said, man, what's up? He said, I've lost 3 people. I said, what? He said, I haven't slept in 2 days. Can't sleep. I work on the 5th floor of this building. I think about jumping off every day. And he said, I've lost 3 people close to me in the last year to violence, including my daughter who died in my arms.
Oh, wow.
Now, he's never told anybody this. His friends, his family, his coworkers. I waved the HR guy over, and I said, look, I said to the young man, are you willing to go with the HR guy? And he goes, yep. And I told HR, look, you need to take this guy to a mental health facility now, directly now, because he's circling the drain. I called the meeting planner back a couple of weeks later and held my breath when I asked, how is he? And she said, Frank, he's medicated. He's back on the job.
Wow, that's good news.
That's good ROI. My goal in life, Travis, is to save a life a day. And that was the one I saved that day.
Let me tell you something, Frank. Guys, listen. And I want y'all to understand, Frank saying, look, I had a lot of good things going for me. It made a turn. And when it made that turn, his mind, the way his mind is hardwired, as Frank said, was to go to look at the gun, the gun as an option. Some of us may say, well, that's a little extreme, or that's something I would not do, or you would not do. But because of the way his mind was hardwired, it went there. And here's what we have to understand. We cannot be or accept the feelings of shame or condemnation or feel bad about the thoughts that go through our head. Get some help for it. Look for some different sources for some assistance for that. But what keeps a lot of people, I believe, Frank, from getting that help are those senses of I'm ashamed. I'm afraid of the stigma that's going to be labeled on it. How do I tell this doctor? Or how do I tell this person I don't know that I'm having these type of thoughts? If you are having unhealthy thoughts and we continue to allow them to sit and brew, eventually we see this enough in the news. They continue to sit and brew. Those unhealthy thoughts become actions. They become unhealthy actions. And those unhealthy actions hurt more than just us. They hurt other individuals around us. It is important that we pay attention to what the thoughts go through our heads, right?
Well, and because men, myself included,
Oh, yeah.
I was raised in the Southeast, and I was taught big boys don't cry.
Listen, I'm in Birmingham, Alabama. I'm in the Southeast. I know what you mean.
And
That is
that's why 8 out of 10 suicides at this moment in this country are men, because we
absolutely.
don't reach out for help.
Absolutely, and it's because we're taught to be self-sufficient. Big boys don't cry. Rub some dirt on it, walk it off. All those things. Some stuff, Frank, you just can't walk off. You just can't.
Well, Travis, if I can make a public service announcement to men, is they not only ignore their mental problems. Men tend to ignore their physical problems. I've had several friends die of colon cancer and prostate cancer, and it was completely unnecessary, because if they'd gotten a colonoscopy or taken a PSA test, both of those conditions are eminently treatable if you catch them early.
Absolutely.
But men also neglect their physical health. So if you're 40 or over, you need to get a colonoscopy and take a PSA test. It's a blood test. It'll tell you whether you got prostate cancer.
Absolutely. So, I'm with you. I've had mine already. Right. I got you.
Yeah. And colonoscopy is no day at the beach. Trust me. But
guys, what we're going to do right here in the middle of the show, what we're going to do is we're going to take a quick 30-second break, because I got to make a mention that the show is also part of the show sponsored by Walmart. That's right, guys. I'm going to place a link in the chat. And I don't want you to send me any of your money. Don't want you to do that. What I want you to do is do what you normally do. Shop, shop, shop. But when you do shop, click on the link that's in the chat. I got to say this, guys. When you do click on that link in the chat, I may earn a commission when you buy through this link. Whether you do the Walmart grocery pickup, whether you're buying that special gift for someone, or you just buying something for the home, use this link and shop, guys. Walmart is an affiliate sponsor of TMG. Tell me something good. Guys, use that link. It's right there. And there's also a QR code as well that you can scan as well. Thank you very much, everybody. Appreciate that. Frank, so we heard that. What are some things or some steps that helped you to kind of recover your laugh again? What are some things that you did? Because there's somebody listening. I guarantee there's somebody listening either now or they're going to come back and say, man, I had some things happen in my life. I don't have a reason to smile. I don't have a reason to laugh again. What makes you think? What makes some things that you did, Frank, to help get your laugh back?
Well, speaking on suicide prevention and helping people is very therapeutic. It's one of the reasons that I'll kill myself, because I figure if I did, I feel like George Bailey in the movie It's a Wonderful Life. I've been shown what these people's lives might be like if I weren't there, simply to reassure them they're not alone. And if I kill myself, I'd probably take some of those people with me. So that keeps me alive. I have a self-care plan.
Good.
Yeah, I think everybody should have one. People called me during the pandemic knowing I'm mentally ill and said, are you holding up during the pandemic? I go, look, here's the deal. I've had 2 aortic valve replacements, a double bypass, a heart attack, 3 stents. I've totaled 3 cars, and I lost to a duck puppet on Star Search. This is not the worst thing that's ever happened.
So you've been through it.
Yeah. So self-care plan, and when I speak, I think you should have action items. So my action items is you need a self-care plan. Here's mine, very simple. Diet. I'm on a keto diet. I do intermittent fasting. Exercise every day. good night's sleep. People nowadays, it bothers me, worries me. They brag about how much sleep, how little sleep they can get by on. I'd much rather you brag to me, man, I got 8 solid hours last night.
I know, right?
So, diet, exercise, good night's sleep, meditation. I think you should. I meditate twice a day. It's a guided meditation, about half an hour after a meal, and medication if it's required. If it's recommended. Here's a tip on medication, Travis.
Mm-hmm.
If you're taking a psychotropic, a medication, psych med, and it ain't working, they now have a DNA cheek swab test. You put your DNA on a Q-tip like you do for Ancestry, send it off.
Mm-hmm.
They'll send you back a list of 1 or 2 antidepressants that'll work best with your metabolism.
Oh.
And the test is only a couple $100. Many insurances cover it, and it helps to eliminate that. Go on, it didn't work, taper off. Go on, didn't work, taper off. So it narrows down the list and makes the transition to meds a lot easier. And here's what connects all 5 of those things, Travis. They're all things I can control.
Wow.
And as somebody living with mental illness who wakes up in an uncertain world every day, whether there's a pandemic or not, I need something to help me get out of bed in the morning and a self-care plan. Here's the second element. It's called gamification. You make a game out of it. If I can't get out of the bed, I make a list, a literal 6-item to-do list. I get up, I start doing the things on the list, and the game is, Travis, when I scratch off number 6, I can go back to bed. I don't care if it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon, broad daylight. I'm going to crawl back into bed and watch the new season of The Mandalorian. So,
I got to catch that.
Yeah. First episode released. I think the second one may be up now. But it's called gamification. The third leg of that stool, they asked an astronaut who was in the space station for a year by himself, hey, man, that is really social distancing. How do you stay sane? And he said, 1 word, schedule. He said, I go to bed same time, get up same time, eat same time. So I have a schedule. Go to bed roughly same time within an hour, get up same time within an hour, exercise same time, eat same time, binge watch Netflix same time. So it's a schedule. That's my 3-legged stool. That's my self-care plan. Again, all things I can control. And because sometimes the world is such, you just got to let the rest of it go because you got no control of it.
Wow. Guys, did you hear? So in other words, what I'm hearing, Frank, is we have to be intentional about some things. So we have to get involved in some things in our life and say, hey, I'm going to make a plan for me. The whole concept, it'll just go away, doesn't work. It doesn't. We have to do some things for ourselves intentionally, on purpose. Self-care, gamification, having a routine schedule for ourselves. And it gives us a reason. Somebody's already put it all in a nice, pretty little bubble there.
Thank you, Nicole.
And she, trust me, she's like that. But it puts it and makes it where we have a reason, as you say, to get out of the bed, and the reason to take again, and it gives us a reason to find our laugh again, to find our smile, our reason why again. Now you travel all over, man, speaking everywhere on depression and mental health, and you have done nine TEDx talks, as we see behind you. TEDx, many, including myself, we're still looking for our first one. So you and I might need to have a conversation a little bit later on. So how do these come about, and can you help others get a TEDx talk? What do we need to do? How do they need to contact you about this? What do we need to do, man?
Well, you can always find me at the Mental Health Comedian. Just type in The Mental Health Comedian, even without the .com, because that's my brand. A friend of mine gave me that. When I told him what I was going to do, he goes, man, you are the Mental Health Comedian. And of course, I ran out and bought the .com, The Mental Health Comedian, Mental Health Comedian. So that's how you can find me. Or just put Mental Health Comedian in the Google search without .com. Trust me, I'll come up. I'm old, but I got an amazing social media presence. The intentional, as you would say. And I coach TEDx. I coach people to get TEDx talks. I've got probably 3 dozen of my clients have done at least one. Some have done 2, and one guy's done 3 TEDx talks. Yeah, the first one I did, I had to apply for. Second and third, 2 TEDx events saw my first and said, do you have any more mental health topics? Yep. So they booked me by invitation. The fourth one, I Fourth one I had to apply for. The fifth one, my favorite, and they didn't even make me audition because the title and subtitle were so good in the application. The title was Mental Health and the Orgasm. Treat your depression single-handedly. My opening line was, I love my iPhone, but I got to tell you, it is my second favorite handheld device. Travis, I closed that and I got a standing ovation with a joke that my wife said, don't do it. And I said, it's going to kill. And the joke was this. I said to the audience, do you know why they call an orgasm an orgasm? And they're looking at me like, no. And I said, because nobody could spell. And I got a standing ovation.
Wait a minute. What'd your wife say, Frank?
She said, I told her. I came on and said, honey, it killed. It got me a standing ovation.
Oh, my gosh. I see why, Frank. We got to watch you. We got to watch you. So you help individuals get TEDx talks. You do a lot of speaking around the country, everywhere, on mental health and depression. And that's why we're having this talk today, guys. No laughing matter. Depression, mental health is not something to laugh about anymore. It's not something that people take funny and say, oh, and make fun of it. It's a very serious thing.
Yes. And again, I don't tell jokes about it. I have funny personal stories. Like when I did my first TEDx, I said to the audience, I did some research. I went to TED.com, the website, and there's hundreds of thousands of talks. And I looked up, I put in the keyword box, suicide, figuring there must be dozens of talks on suicide. Well, it turns out there were three.
Oh, wow.
I said to the audience, well, duh. I mean, if you're really good at suicide, you're not going to be around to record. Yeah, so there's humor in there. I mean, my friends called me. A guy called me the other day, called me late on the phone. He goes, man, I'm sorry I called late. I hope I didn't leave you hanging. I said, would you like to rephrase that? Just funny things happen all the time. A young woman was booking me for a keynote. She knows I put a gun in my mouth. And she said, you're doing a keynote for us. And I said, yes, Michelle. What do you want me to cover? She said, just give me a few bullet points. So I let that hang in the air, and she goes, oh, no, oh, no, oh, no. I go, relax, Michelle. It was just too funny not to point it out.
Wow. Man, I wish we could do this all night, man. I am so honored, Frank. I get to talk and meet wonderful people like you, man. I really am. And I'm gonna get some information from you. Guys, listen, they say that laughter is good for the soul. Guys, we smiled and laughed a lot tonight, but depression and suicide are real. If you feel you need to speak to someone, you can call your local crisis center near you. I did not have that information to put in chat, but call your
988 is the new 3-digit suicide prevention lifeline and text line number, 988.
That's why I thought it was. I wanted to make sure, but I'm glad you verified that.
Yep, used to be an 800 number, and we work for we as in the mental health community work for decades to get a 3-digit number.
There it is, right there, guys. It's on your screen. 988 is your suicide prevention line, guys. If you're feeling overwhelmed, if like you need to speak to someone, please reach out to someone. You're not in this alone. Go ahead, Frank.
And 988 also works as a text line, and because younger people are far more forthcoming in text. They don't like talking on the phone. I don't know if you've tried to call a young person recently, but I don't even bother leaving messages anymore because I text them and they get right back to me. That's just the way young people are wired.
Oh, trust me. My wife and I, we know that. They definitely will text you sooner than they will call you. I promise you.
Yeah.
So you can use that 988 as a text, or you can dial it. Doesn't matter. You will be able to get in contact with someone. So if you find that you need some help, please go do that. Listen, also keep in mind that you might find the help that you need to find your next laugh. Guys, let me go ahead and get out of here. Guys, it's that time. And as always, it's been a real blast. Listen, don't forget to visit our YouTube page. That's Tell Me Something Good with the capital T. And right here each Thursday at our new time, 6 p.m. Central. However, this week, guys, we will have another special guest at 6:30 p.m., another live interview. He is an Elvis entertainer. But what makes this individual so special is that he has autism, and he's going to share his incredible story of how autism doesn't stop him or prevent him from being the best that he can be. Frank, thank you so much for being part of the show, man. So glad that you are being here, man. Any parting words before you get out of here, man?
Yes, let me close this as a comedian would. If you enjoyed the podcast, please rate, review, and subscribe and tell your friends. If you did not enjoy the podcast, we hope you have no friends.
Now that right there, you can't get any better than that, guys. Don't forget to stream your favorite episode on your favorite streaming podcast platforms like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon, Pandora, and so much more. And before we get out of here, you know how we're going to do it. If you're going to tell me something, then tell me something good. I'm out of here. I got to go.